This episode is brought to you by Nordstrom Rack. Hey y'all, and welcome to Trials to Triumphs. I'm Ashley Blaine Featherson-Jenkins, but you can call me ABFJ. This week, boxing champion and CEO of Laila Ali Lifestyle, Laila Ali talks to me about making history and having no regrets. From a very young age, Laila marched to the beat of her own drum. When she decided to follow in her famous father's footsteps, Laila knew he wouldn't approve of her entering the ring, but she trusted her gut. Today, as an undefeated boxing world champion, Laila's success demonstrates the importance of always trusting your intuition in the face of opposition.
They just kept calling me. So I decided to go to a boxing gym. I said, let me see if I have it, because this is going to be a pretty big deal. Muhammad Ali's daughter starts fighting, and there would be a lot of pressure on me, a lot of people against it. I already knew. So I had to be confident. I have to be sure. And the only way I can do that is if I go and see if I got it or not.
Hi, Laila. Welcome to the pod.
Hi, thank you.
I love, you guys didn't hear this, but the first thing she said when she saw me was, how are you doing? And just how's your heart, basically. And I just thought that was really sweet and really nice. And we're both in a good heart space. So this is going to be a great conversation. We haven't met in person, but you have been such an inspiration to me, for just so long. And it's because for me, you are not only a champion, but you are, you have such a full life. And for me, being a woman and a young girl at a time that wanted to chase her dreams, I always knew that I wanted to have a life outside of just performing. I didn't know what it was going to look like. I didn't know how I was going to get it, but I knew that I wanted it. And so I'm really excited to tell you face to face that, like, not only did you inspire me to, achieve my dreams and go after everything I want, but to also remember to live in the midst of it all. And your life is such an inspiration to me. I love watching you and your family especially. And I'm so excited to talk about everything.
Well, good. I'm excited to share with you also. And I'm happy that I've been able to inspire you, because I think that's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about. All right. So Laila, let's start from the beginning. Talk to me about home. What would you say Southern California gave you?
So I was born in Miami Beach, Florida. My dad was there training for a fight, and my mom had me there, and I was probably there for about 30 days. So I never lived there. We moved to California. And that's pretty much where I was raised. I live in Georgia now. I was in California up until 2021. And California was just home in terms of, what I miss now about California, obviously, is the weather and the coast, being able to drive down the coast, and just having, now that I'm into gardening and, just being able to plant certain things all year long, you didn't have to think about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where a lot of my family is. California was always a really warm place for me.
Talk to me about your mom, Laila. When you think about your mom, what is a lesson that still stays with you that she imparted upon you, especially now that you're a mother?
My mom is a very graceful woman, beautiful, gorgeous. She probably, if she could parent again, she probably would do it totally different. She probably has a lot of regrets, in the way that she went about raising us. And that's my words, not hers. But just from knowing my mother, that's what I would think. So for me, I mentioned grace. I've learned a lot about, how to carry myself, how to communicate with others, regardless of how they treat you. I mean, my mom was in the spotlight, a really young girl. I mean, she married my father when she was 19 years old. I mean, come on,
Wow.
marrying Muhammad Ali, the greatest of all
Wow.
time, and a baby. Okay. So he
Mm.
swept her off her feet. She didn't know anything,
Mm.
and I had nannies growing up. She had a staff, you know. Then when my parents divorced, she got remarried. And I would say that now, I mean, looking back, she probably definitely would have a lot of regrets. So for me, what I've learned from my mom is just how to be myself, but still be there for my children, and put how to
Mm.
put my children first. I probably overcompensate a little bit because of my childhood, you
Yeah.
know, and I'm one of those people who doesn't want to have regrets. We're all going to
Mm.
have some, or we're going to be like, okay, we learned from the situation. We're going to do things differently. But I'm talking about those big life regrets, right?
Yeah.
And one of them I don't want to be is how I went about raising my children, because to me, that's one of the most important roles that we play as human beings is
Hmm.
bringing other life into this world and raising our children. So I am one of the people who make a lot of sacrifices and put it all on the line for my children. But
Hmm.
one thing I know about my mom is that regardless of any of the regrets that she may have had, she still has a big heart. She has a
Mm.
kind heart, and she's constantly open to learn and grow and become better than she was yesterday. And that's really
Mm.
what's amazing about her.
Wow. Did your or do you remember the point in your relationship with your mom? I know that growing up, especially when you were like a teenager, it was a little angsty. There was a lot going on. But was there a point, maybe even when you got older, where you and your mom kind of had this conversation as two adults? And if so, what did it look like?
Um, you know, we've definitely had conversations, but I would never have my mom talk about things that she is not ready to talk about.
Hmm.
So you kind of the same way you do an interview, you kind of put things out there, see where it leads, right?
Yeah.
You know certain information, and then that allows the person to give what they want to give. Because when it's a situation where someone might have regrets or have things that they're ashamed of or whatever the case is, you have to handle that in a certain way. But I know that my mom is very proud of the woman that I grew in to be,
Mm.
and she's very happy that regardless of any mistakes that she might have made, that God had His hand on me, on us, and that everything turns out as it's supposed to. So when you really have that belief as your faith and your foundation, um, you know, it puts a little ease on things.
This episode is brought to you by Nordstrom Rack. I'm Ashley Blaine Featherson-Jenkins, host of Trials to Triumphs and proud Howard University alum. I am so excited to share with you the impact that Howard University had on my life and hope you recognize the beauty and the power of the HBCU experience. Being an HBCU alumni has benefited me in literally every way. It doesn't matter where I go. It doesn't matter what I want to do. There's always somebody from the HBCU community that's going to be there to help me. Even with my podcast, I have HBCU community within the team that is working on my podcast and that is helping make it happen. So I always feel like I'm covered, I'm protected, I'm supported, and most importantly, I always feel like I'm seen. A phrase that is talked a lot about in the HBC community is Sankofa. We're always reaching back, and I definitely feel that in every aspect of my life and my career. Homecoming season is upon us, and if you've attended an HBCU, you know it's a time to celebrate and look your best. Visit your local Nordstrom Rack store or shop online at nordstromrack.com. Download the Nordstrom Rack app for even easier shopping too. Huge thanks to Nordstrom Rack for supporting the show and celebrating HBCU homecoming with us. Back to our conversation. Talk to me about your dad. What would you say is one of the biggest lessons your dad imparted upon you?
Oh, there's so much that I can say, but I think that my father, at his core, just loved people. And he was a
Mm.
kind person, and regardless of how famous he was, global icon, everywhere we went, I mean, people bowing down, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
because of a song that he made or a role that he played, because of how they helped him feel about themselves, or him standing for others when they didn't have a voice for themselves,
Mm,
and just what he represented, who he was as a man. But he never ever felt like he was better than anybody else. He never, compromised his values or his principles. He never stepped on anyone to get ahead. He just was all around just a very authentic human being. And so he has always been, kind of the standard for me of where, we should be, in
hmm.
terms of that authenticity. And so many people put him on a pedestal for things that a lot of times that they just can't find within themselves. But I feel like
Hmm.
kind of should be standard, you would think.
Yeah.
Because for me, it was. It's like, oh yeah, you should stand up for what you believe in. Oh yeah, you should do right from wrong. Oh yeah, you should be a good person. You should. But a lot of times we don't for whatever reason. So,
Yeah.
he was a really special, special person, and you know, we had to suffer in terms of not having a father in home all the time. But that's the case
Hmm.
when you're out freeing hostages and
Mm.
you're guiding the world and doing all these things. You're gonna miss dinner. You're gonna miss graduation. You're gonna miss certain things. So
Yeah.
that's not something that I ever felt like I had to suffer, until, like you mentioned, when you grow up and you look back, you're like, wow, But I don't ever,
Mhm.
he was such a gift to the world
Yeah.
that, I feel good about, the entire situation when I look back at it, and just having him as a father and the experience that I had with him, and how he's so loved and the reason why he's so loved, and just having that same DNA
Mhm.
is very, gives me a
Mm.
lot of pride.
Yeah. You had to share your dad with the world. Like, that's a very unique experience. And although in some ways there were things that just due to that you're going to kind of miss out on, maybe, like you said, the purpose and the lasting legacy is so much bigger. And that's something that with age, you can continue to grow and appreciate and have so much, you know, uh, I guess just gratefulness for.
I have siblings, and I'm sure that everybody probably would say something similar, but everyone has a different situation, depending on their relationship with dad. So I wasn't super close to my dad. Most people would think, that I was daddy's girl. And I say that
Mm.
in a way, of course, he's my dad, but I'm saying I wasn't daddy's girl. That's what I mean when I say I was a super close.
Hmm.
My sister Hannah was daddy's girl. People would think because I'm the boxer that I was. But I was more of a mama's girl growing up. So I was
Mm.
never like, oh, I miss daddy. Where's daddy? Because that was the only life I knew. I was used to, him not always being there. So I think it's harder when,
Mm.
you have it and it's taken away. That will be something different. So I think that all of us have probably had a different experience.
Yeah, well, that was actually my next question. Growing up with so many siblings, like, was there sibling rivalry? Was it like a fun party all the time? Like, what was the vibe? Because, I have a much different experience. I have one older sister and we are 9 years apart. So there was like a small amount of time that we were even in the house at the same time. So I cannot imagine having all of these siblings. Like, so tell me, what did it feel like growing up with all of these siblings? And then how would you describe kind of where you fell, not only in like, position necessarily, but just in like personality with your siblings?
So I have one full sister who I actually lived with, and
Okay.
the rest were step. So we weren't all in the same home together. I'm the youngest. I'm the
Hmm.
youngest girl. So I have one brother who came after me. He's adopted, but I'm the youngest. I was the youngest for a long time, right? And they would come in town for summers and come visit.
Hmm.
And I think that I was so young, but there probably was a little bit of sibling animosity and all that because daddy left and got remarried, and this is his new family. You know how kids are.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I'm sure there was some of that. I wasn't really focused on that, but I was always kind of really shy, but at the same time a little bit of, a little feisty. And I was always the one that, like I said, I wasn't necessarily daddy's girl. I was the one that was kind of more, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to follow those rules. I'm very
Hmm.
good at listening to my intuition. If I'm
Mm-hmm.
wrong, I'd rather be wrong because I made the choice, not because I did something I didn't feel good about doing, but I did it anyway. Those are the times that I've regretted. I said we all have certain regrets where I didn't listen to
Yeah.
myself. And I think that's really
Mm.
important. And I'm blessed to have had that, that gift at a very young age. And, with a lot of what I went through in my life, sometimes my energy was directed in the wrong place in terms of just
Mm.
being this little rebel, that I became because of some of the anger that I had inside. But I always did do what I felt was right. My intentions were always good, you know?
Mm-hmm. Do you have an example that you can share with us of a time when you didn't follow your intuition and you knew you should have, but you didn't, and maybe how on the other side of that you said, Layla, okay, we have to start listening to ourselves.
My first marriage.
That's
I'm in my
real.
second marriage. So my first marriage, I remember um, feeling, well, I was pressured, kind of like, let's get married, let's get married. And I'm like, well, why? Like, what's the rush? What's the rush? Like, if it's right, it's going to be there. And he was older than me, and he was like, "Look, I'm older. I'm not. It was kind of that thing. We're going to get married. But I'm like, my young mind was thinking at the time, well, he's a boxer. I'm a boxer. Well, he knows because he knew a lot more than me, and he knew that what I wanted to know, and he was helping me, become a boxer and kind of being a mentor to me in boxing. And then
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, it must be right, you know. But my
Mm-hmm.
intuition was telling me this is too soon. What's the rush? It doesn't feel right. It's like usually as a woman, you want to get married. You're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
sweep me off my feet. I want to get married. You don't feel like you're kind of like being told, no, we let's just do it. I mean, we're dating, we're together, and I'm thinking, well, what's the rush? It just felt very pushy. It felt very pushy, but
Mm-hmm.
I talked myself into it at the time, thinking, no, I'm like a smart girl, I think things
Mm-hmm.
through, and it made sense to me, So there was that other voice that was there also, and sometimes it's challenging to listen to your own intuition when you're reasoning and you're thinking things through in your mind. I've thought of all these answers, okay, of no, this is why this works, right? This is why this is perfect. But that feeling inside wasn't right, you know? So that's where
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I think we can talk ourselves into things in our mind and not listen to our intuition. And really, at the end of the day, and it's crazy because I mentioned regrets a few times, in our
Mm-hmm.
conversation already, but I don't regret getting married though. I don't regret getting
Mm-hmm.
married, even though it was crazy. I went through a crazy experience, but I also was able to box and focus on just my boxing because that in the relationship, he was my manager, he was my promoter, he helped me guide me through in a world that's a men's boxing world that I probably wouldn't have been able to navigate the way that I did and really just focus on boxing. So I think that, you know, one thing if I would do differently, I would say I probably would have got out of it sooner, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't regret actually getting married. And I stayed because I didn't think I'd be able to box without him. Like
Mm-hmm.
I felt like this is what I need right now. But what I was really in love with was boxing. You see what I'm
Mm.
saying? I was really in love with
Yeah.
boxing. So that was what kept me there. And, I knew that the relationship wasn't right. That's why I was like, I'm not going to have children. So it's like when and I made a choice, then I'm not going to be able to blame anybody but myself, because
Yeah.
I chose to go forward with it. I chose to stay in it, but I definitely learned a whole lot about myself, about other people, and what I wasn't going to do the second time. So
Mm. All right. Well, so Layla, I have to know. How did you really get into boxing, right? So obviously your father is the great Muhammad Ali, right? But like you said, like you weren't necessarily a daddy's girl. You definitely had your own thoughts and very informed feelings about who you were in the world and all of these things. But when did the download come to you like that you wanted to go into boxing? And did you resist it at first? Or did you listen to your intuition right away?
So I saw women's boxing on television for the first time when I was about 18 years old. I
Mhm.
was at a friend's house to watch a Mike Tyson fight, and these women came into the ring on the undercard. Now, at the time, I had moved out the house. I had went to beauty school. I had a manicuring license. I had a nail studio. I had a business by the time I was 18. Yes, I've always been very ambitious. So I had a full clientele. I still keep that nail license, by the way. I'm still a licensed manicurist.
Yes.
Yes, I keep that up. But yeah, so I saw these women come into the ring, and I was, oh my God, I did not know women boxed. I didn't know that was even a possibility for me as a sport,
Mm.
and I immediately wanted to do it. I'd always been a fighter, always had this fighting spirit, and I was like, oh my God, I had no idea. And so I went home dreaming about becoming a boxer that night, and then woke up, of course, talking myself out of it. Like, I never participated in sports. I was not an athlete. I wouldn't know the first thing that it took. What was my dad going to say? What was everyone going to think? Like, this is crazy. It's not a part of my plan. I'm a planner. I plan to be in school full time, have a nail salon, open a chain of, exclusive spas around the world. I had these dreams, right? So this did not fit into it. So I talked myself out of it. But it took me about a year of contemplation to really, think about it. And it just kept calling me. So I decided to go to a
Mm.
boxing gym. I said, let me see if I have it, because this is going to be a pretty big deal. Muhammad Ali's daughter starts fighting, and there would be a lot of pressure on me. A lot of people against it. I already knew. So I have to be confident. I have to be sure. And the only way I can do that is if I go and see if I got it or not. So before I talk to anyone about it, or, let me go test the water. So I started training in secrecy,
Mm.
at in the evening, after school, after work, 8 o'clock at night, 6 days a week. I would walk into that boxing gym and train for 2 hours, and of course, my body transformed. I dropped about 30 pounds, and became, and then I fell in love with boxing. So it took me about 4 months in, and I was like, yeah, this is what I
Mm.
want to do. And then it got it back around to my dad, and that's when it got real. When he asked me
So wait,
about,
did you tell him or did he like find out through the grapevine?
he found out, which
Oh.
I knew I was gonna have to tell him eventually, but I hadn't told him yet. But I had decided that I wanted to do it, and it got around because boxing gyms, also like anything else, are small, right? It gets around. Like,
Hmm.
okay, I remember I started sparring, which is actually boxing with someone in the ring practicing, and I sparred this guy, and I dropped him with a right hand, like dropped him down on the canvas, and that got
Mm.
around. That got around. Like, wait a minute, So she says she wasn't trying to box. But first of all, why are you sparring? That's a sign. Like, okay, you're actually willing to get hit. You can go to the gym. People are like,
Mm.
oh yeah, I box as a workout, but you're not actually getting hit. If you actually
Got
step
it.
into that ring to get hit, then people think,
Mm.
okay, you must want to box. So when I got in there, even though I was saying I wasn't boxing, they were like, okay, she has the heart of a fighter if she's willing to get hit. And they've seen me get hit and drop this guy. So it got back to my dad. And he said to me, he came in town and he said, I hear you're boxing. And I was like, yep. And again, this is one of those serious conversations where I could see this look in his eyes, and I knew he wasn't going to like what I had to say.
Hmm.
So he tried to talk me out of it. He used reverse psychology, of course, because he knew me. He knows Layla. You can't just say no. So he tried to talk me out of it. And he says, it's going to be hard. Everyone's going to be watching you. There's going to be so much pressure on you. Do you have any idea how hard it would be with all this pressure? And I said, yep, Dad, I thought about it. And, this is what I want to do. So he's just huffing
Mm.
and puffing because, this girl's 19. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She's a kid. She doesn't have any idea what kind of pressure. So then he says, well, do you realize there's going to be a ring with lights and people yelling, and then you're going to get in there? What if you get knocked down on the canvas in front of everybody? I said, well, I'm going to get back up like you did. And he got really frustrated
Mm.
because his reverse psychology just kind of wasn't working. And then he finally said what was really on his mind. He told me that it wasn't for me. It's not for you. It's not for women. It's too hard. I don't want you to do it. Women should not be in that ring. And I'm against it. And that's what I expected him to say. And I said, Dad, I
Hmm.
respect you. I respect how you feel, but I want to do it. I'm going to do it. I've already made my mind up. And, you can either support me or not. It really doesn't matter, because I'm going to do it anyway. So
Mm.
he didn't want to hear that. He didn't want to hear that. I mean, because number one, he had no control. Number two, he was, I'm sure, afraid. I could say this in hindsight, for his daughter, right?
Yes.
Because I know I wouldn't want
Yes.
my children. I wouldn't want my children boxing in this grimy sport, in a men's grimy, dirty boxing gym. And women's boxing isn't even where it is now, and it still has a long way to go. But it wasn't in the
Mm-hmm.
Olympics. You didn't hear about female boxers. There was no Laila Ali, for him to
Mm-hmm.
see. He never heard of women boxing. So he's like, "What are you talking about?" Right?
Yeah.
So he expected. I mean, he envisioned the worst, right? So, but in my point of view at the time was, well, it ain't my problem if you don't get it. So
Mm.
you better catch up. So, I did it. I turned pro, and he supported me. He did. He came and he showed up, and which was amazing. And he did come back to me after I won my second title, and he said, "I'm sorry. I was
Mm.
wrong. You can fight. Women can fight, and I'm proud of you." And
Mm.
we both just cried
Yeah.
and hugged each other because I had told myself, I don't care what he thinks. I don't care. I'm going to do this. And, my whole Layla thing, and that's what I needed to do at the time, though, because I couldn't sit around and say the greatest of all time, global icon, and my amazing father just told me I can't do what I want to do, and that I'm not going to be able to do it. It's not for me, it's not for women, and I'm going to allow that to let me doubt myself. Imagine being 19 years old, starting something absolutely new, going and doing it on my own. Most people would assume that someone took my hand and said, "Look out for
Yeah.
my daughter." Make sure she has the best of everything, the best trainers, the best nutritionists, make sure she's being looked out for. Nobody would have expected me to be driving downtown LA by myself, parking in a grimy parking lot, getting in there, showing up every night, doing this in the men's boxing gym. So without the support of anybody, right? And I chose
Mm.
to do it that way, might I add, right? So I'm not complaining about that. I'm just saying that most people have a different vision, right, of what that would have been like. But
Yes.
it wasn't like that at all. So that was the real story right there.
Wow. But you know what? Like you said, I think kind of the theme of our episode is like no regrets, right? Like it happened the way it was supposed to. I think there was something maybe about you having kind of like this solo journey in it that allowed you to own it in a way to become the champion that you are and not have it directly correlated to your father's success. I think that that's part of how you paved the road for other female boxers in the way that you have is because you have this like solo hero's journey and you didn't have the help or the backing in ways that people probably would have assumed that you would have. It added to a grit that you needed to be in that ring to be as successful as you've been. So I don't know, I needed to hear that because it's a reminder that like everything in your journey you're going to use. Even if it feels like, why do I have to be going about it this way? Why is it, isn't there an easier route? But looking back, I'm sure you're able to say like, I get why it had to be that way. And that's
Well,
beautiful.
yeah, yeah. Like I said, I believe that everything happens the way that it does for a reason. And I'm the one who decided to become a boxer. I'm the one that wanted to do it.
Hmm.
And, you can't expect everyone to sign up to be a part of it, right? As a parent, you definitely want to support your children. Like my father did support me publicly,
Hmm.
and he'd let it be known that he wasn't happy about it, but he
Hmm.
didn't purposely say more than he had to say. But he had to be true to himself. He wasn't going to go out
Yeah.
in public and say, "Yeah, I love this," and it was fine. But I learned at a very young age, thank God, that I learned, like I said, from watching my father, for him standing up for what he believed in. Right, I learned that, so I was going to do the same for myself, and I believed that I could be a good boxer. It was in my heart to do. I may be a girl, I'm not a boy. People would have accepted it easier if I was Muhammad Ali's son. They'd be like, "Oh yeah,
Hmm.
it's going to come behind." And I understood why people weren't comfortable with women boxing. And I understand now, and I don't encourage anybody to box. So you don't see me trying to promote boxers. I don't have any
Mm.
involvement in boxing. But if someone really wants to do it, then I would say, okay, if you want advice, I'm going to guide you. But I don't ever say, I'm trying to help these girls become boxers, because I believe that if I would have had a different upbringing and the support of my parents being around, I probably would have played sports. I probably would have played tennis, or I probably would have, played soccer or something else that is a more organized sport that isn't quite as shady as boxing can be sometimes, and some of the things that you have
Mm.
to deal with. Because I learned through boxing that I had this competitive edge and that I was an athlete, but I didn't have what it takes to be an athlete as a child, because you have to have your parents' support or someone's support to sign you up, in the leagues,
Mm.
to take you to practice, to take you to the games, to develop that. So I missed out on that. I didn't have that opportunity. That's one of the reasons why I became involved with Billie Jean King's organization, the Women's Sports Foundation. I'm a past president of the organization, because I believe that children should play sports. They should participate in sports because of all of the qualities that you learn from sports, not necessarily to become a pro athlete. But I missed out on a lot of that. And that's why I got in some trouble growing up, and my anger was redirected. And if I would have had something somewhere else to place that energy, then I probably
Mm.
wouldn't have gone through some of the things that I had to go through to learn the lessons that I learned, that I would have ended up learning anyway. But I'm saying, I really value sports now. But boxing for me was because of the anger that I had. And you got to have something, you do. Like,
Yeah.
I will say, as a fighter, because to be able to go to that place that most people can't understand, because people are like, what? I'm like, you gotta be a little special. Like, when special, I mean a little crazy. You gotta be a little special to want to fight for a living. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, but there's got to be something there, because there's going to be at some point somebody in there that wants it just as bad as you and is trying to take your head off. And where are you going to dig deep? Where is that place going to be? So I wouldn't have been able to just be what some people might think. Oh, I had a silver spoon in my mouth and life's been easy and everything's been handed
Mm.
to me. Because these girls are coming in there to take my head off. They're like, oh, she thinks she's cute. Oh, she's Muhammad Ali's daughter. Oh, she's getting all this attention. And I've been here fighting and nobody's giving me any attention. I'm going to whoop her ass. And then I had a whole nother plan for them when they got in there and they found out. But I'm saying everybody fought me 10 times harder, you know?
Mm.
And but it was all that was fun to me. That was fun to me, which, like I'm saying, is why I'm a little special, because I loved every moment of it.
Yeah, this is hearing it is stressing me out. My heart is racing. I'm forming a headache. I can't imagine. You're right. It takes a certain type of person, a special person, to be able to go into that ring and be like, oh, you want to fight me? I'm going to fight you 10 times harder. I would just be like, ma'am, can we just talk about this, please? Like, I
Right,
don't want to fight
right.
you. Like, I don't want to. But this is what I want to know. What are the things that being a boxer has taught you about just being a woman, maybe, or how to, or interacting with people in life?
I pretty much always have my game face on,
Mm.
and um, I'm pretty laid back. I'm pretty calm and cool and collected, for lack of a better word. And, I try to stay in control of my emotions and my feelings no matter what's going on. And that's something that I definitely learned
Mm.
from boxing. I don't lose it. I don't lose my head. I don't lose my cool ever.
Mm.
Never ever am I like, ah, like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. You know what I mean? So I think that is a, a superpower of mine. Um, because you just never know what life's going to throw at you. And I feel like what it really comes down to is I like to be in control of myself. And if you allow others to come in and disrupt your energy, disrupt your day just because something they said or did, then you're not really in
Mm.
control, of your own space. So that's something
Mm.
that for me, is really important to me. And I think it started with boxing because, a part of what I did before a fight is getting people's head. That's part of it. So you win the fight
Mm.
before you actually get into the ring.
Ooh.
And then you kind of have to put the cherry on top, and this is me coming from my point of view, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I did. So I would start the fight before the actual fight, and that takes having a game face on. So that's where I think I've carried that on with
That's
me.
good. That's good. That's really good. And that's giving me a little insight into the world of boxers. I'm like, oh, you win before you even step in there. That's like a little insider tip. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. But that's great. But I think having a level head and just being in control, I think it goes back to what we were talking about. Like, the only person you can control is yourself. You can't control anybody else. You just can't. And in boxing, which is like a two-person sport, if you have control over your body, then you can make happen what you need to happen and be less concerned, really, I guess, with what they're going to do, because you know what you're going to do. And you're confident in your abilities and what your strengths are. Like, you can focus on who and have confidence in who you are. And I think that clearly has really served you really well in life. I want to talk about your pivot from boxing. Like, when you retired, did you really mourn it, or were you like, it's time? It's time. And I'm
Yeah.
excited for all these new opportunities on the other side.
Yeah, it was time. You can't box forever. And I wanted to start a family. I got remarried and I was like, okay, it's time to leave the sport. There really isn't anyone left for me that I'm inspired by to continue fighting at an elite level and training at an elite level. So,
Hmm.
but it is hard because that's what I loved. That's what I worked at for 10 years, for so long. And, it was hard to let it go, but I knew that I needed to. But yes, like you said, I wanted to get back to my entrepreneur, being an entrepreneur, and I had all these different business ideas, but I had worked so hard to be seen as a serious fighter because when it became public, it was all, you're too pretty. That was all it was ever. You're too pretty. Why? And I'm like, I got so tired of hearing that. But whenever I was talking about fighting and, knocking somebody out and coming in with a serious face on, you're kind of in a box now because they're like, they see you as just a fighter. So I had to build a new, reinvent myself, basically. First, it started with just kind of what was coming to me, what made sense, which aligned with my values and my personality. But then halfway through it, it was like, but I don't feel fulfilled. And that's when I started thinking about health and wellness and the things that were really important to
Mm.
me, the things I was doing behind the scenes, which was writing people meal plans and detoxes and helping friends lose weight and all these different things. And that's when I started Laila Ali Lifestyle. Um, and was working on that. And then I started kind of guiding the opportunities. Like, I went on Chopped and competed on the Food Network and won Chopped a couple times because I knew I was coming out with my cookbook. And then I came out with my organic spice blends. But all of this was, okay, I need to shape the way that people see me, because otherwise it would have been like,
Mm.
boxer cooking. Wait a minute, what? Now people forget I was even a boxer a lot of the time. I'm like, oh
Mm.
no, don't forget that part. Um, I have, but I have that. I still have that. That's why I do have that rough edge to me, though, and I'm fine with it. I don't ever try to hide it because that's who I am. That's who I've always been. I've
Mm.
always been a fighter. I will always be a fighter. There's more than one ways to fight, but I will always be a fighter. Um, but I'm always going to be authentically Layla. So anybody who ever meets me or anything that I do, I think that it's pretty clear I'm a strong individual in terms of my
Yeah.
personality. Some people can be intimidated by that. But depending on what it is that I'm doing, you might see the softer side. Like when I was hosting and I show up, hey, we're here to we're doing your living room today. That's not the place to be, too strong to intimidate people, right? So
Yeah.
it's nice to have different versions of yourself that you can call upon when they're needed. But when I'm on a
Yeah.
stage speaking, I do a lot of speaking now, just corporations or whatever the case may be. If I'm speaking about transformation, or if I'm speaking about reinventing yourself or a championship mindset, then I have to call back on some of those times and stand there in front of 16,000 people, many of which are men, and be giving them
Hmm.
advice on how to be strong, right? So I feel like no matter what it is that I'm doing, I want to be a representation, not only of a Black woman, a woman, but just a person who, um, you know, was true to themselves and authentic, but still at the same time go after their dreams in life.
Yeah.
So that's really what my focus is, and trying to be an inspiration to others.
Hmm. Laila, what has been your takeaway from our conversation today?
My takeaway is just how insightful you are and what a beautiful person that you are. And, I see that you're a deep thinker, and you're younger than me. I'm 45. You're in your 30s. Did you say 34
35,
earlier?
35.
35.
Mhm.
So, that makes me feel good that, the younger generation coming up. I know I'm making myself sound real old right now, but I don't care. But I get concerned about the younger generation. I think about my daughter and who her role models are going to be.
Mm.
So for me to have, the opportunity to spend time with you and see that you're so full, and that you're giving back in this way, that it gives me hope that my daughter will have someone that she can look up to, not just you, because if it's you, then there's more of you out there, right?
Hmm.
But someone that she can say was an inspiration to her. So I'm taking away from what you're giving.
Oh my goodness. My takeaway is your takeaway about me. I can't believe you said that. Laila, oh my gosh. Thank
And
you
look
so
how pretty you
much.
are. Look how
Oh my,
beautiful you are.
look how beautiful.
And and I know you've heard that. I know you've
I'm
heard
like
that. I
bursting.
know
I'm
you.
literally bursting from the
I know.
seams.
I hope that millions and millions of people have the opportunity to listen to your podcast and learn and grow from it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And, quickly, I just want to share that my takeaway is this conversation has been so special to me, but also it has been the reminder that we women, we contain multitudes. You have had so many lives, so many careers, so many, all in 45 years. And it gets me excited for what my next 10 years will look like and the 10 years after that. So, I am just so grateful that you were here. I honor you, Laila, and I cannot wait for us to meet in person and give each other a really big hug.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was great. We did it. Thank you for listening. This podcast is produced by LWC Studios for OWN. The show's executive producer is Juleka Lantigua. Our managing producer is Fatima El-Swifi. Shanice Tyndall is our lead producer. Associate producer is Mona Hassan. Jordan Thompson is our marketing coordinator. This episode was mixed by Trin Lightburn. Michelle Baker is our video editor. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, and we hope you did, please make sure to subscribe, leave a rating, and review wherever you listen to your podcast to ensure you hear the next one.